Hi everyone, welcome to Emma, a true infidelity story. I'm excited to share a new story with you. My name is Emma, a dedicated physician with a passion for healing others. My life until recently seemed picture perfect. I live with my loving husband, Theodore, who works as an architect, and our loyal dog, Jack, a playful golden retriever. Our home, nestled in a quiet suburb, was filled with laughter, love, and the occasional bark from Jack. Theodore and I have been together for over a decade. Our relationship built on mutual respect and shared dreams. However, beneath this serene exterior, a storm was brewing, one that would shake the very foundations of our marriage. The first signs were subtle, almost invisible in the tapestry of our daily life. It started with Theodore's new habit of working late, something he had never done before. His office hours extended into the night, and he'd come home with stories of new projects, deadlines, and the pressure of his firm's expectations. I believed him. Of course, why wouldn't I? We had built our lives on trust, but then the late nights turned into missed dinners, and those missed dinners evolved into weekends away for work conferences. Each time he left, I'd wave him off with a smile, a kiss, and a reminder to take care. Yet something in his eyes, a flicker of something I couldn't quite place, began to gnaw at me. One evening, as I was preparing for bed, I found a receipt in the pocket of his jacket. It was from a restaurant we'd never been to in a part of town we rarely visited. The date was from a night he claimed to have been working late. My heart skipped a beat, not from fear but from a sudden, chilling realization. I didn't confront him immediately. Instead, I started to observe more closely. His phone, once left carelessly on the kitchen counter, now seemed to be an extension of his hand. He'd take calls outside, away from my earshot. His laughter, once freely shared with me, now seemed reserved for someone else. The real shift came when I noticed changes in our intimacy. Our once passionate connection felt distant, like a memory fading at the edges. I tried to bridge the gap to reignite what we had, but Theodore seemed elsewhere, his mind, his heart. They were no longer fully mine. I remember the night I decided to follow him. It was a Friday and he had mentioned a late meeting. I waited until he left, then followed at a distance. My heart pounded in my C*******T, not from the thrill of the chase but from the dread of what I might discover. He didn't go to his office. Instead, he drove to a quaint little cafe, one we used to visit in our early days of dating. There, under the soft glow of string lights, I saw him. He wasn't alone. Across from him sat a woman, her laughter mingling with his, her hand occasionally reaching out to touch his. I stood there, hidden by the shadows, watching as my world crumbled. The woman was beautiful, with an air of familiarity that made my stomach churn. I recognized her. She was a colleague from his firm, someone I had met at company events. The pain was immediate, a sharp, piercing betrayal that left me breathless. I wanted to scream to confront them, but my feet were rooted to the spot. My mind raced with questions, with accusations, with the undeniable truth that my husband, my Theodore, was sharing with another. What should have been ours alone? I left before they noticed me, my heart heavy with a sorrow I had never known. That night I lay in our bed alone, staring at the ceiling, feeling the weight of 1,000 unspoken words. But what if I told you that this idyllic life was about to be shattered by an act so unthinkable it would leave me questioning everything? That night, as I lay in bed, the silence was deafening. The house felt empty even with Jack's soft snoring beside me. My mind replayed the scene at the cafe over and over each time, the pain growing sharper, more unbearable. I couldn't sleep. Couldn't even close my eyes without seeing Theodore's face lit by the soft glow of those string lights, laughing with her. I got up restless and wandered through our home, every corner. Every piece of furniture seemed to mock me with memories of our life together. The couch where we'd watch movies, the kitchen where we'd cook together, now all felt like stages set for a play that had lost its meaning. I found myself in the kitchen, staring at the dinner table where just hours before Theodore had served me dinner, the plates were still there, untouched by the dishwasher, a silent testament to the evening's pretense. I picked up his plate, the one he had eaten from, and for a moment I felt the warmth of his presence, the comfort of our routine. But then, the reality crashed back and I set the plate down with a clatter, the sound echoing through the emptiness. I needed air, needed to escape the confines of these walls that now felt like a cage stepping outside. Cool night air was a sharp contrast to the stifling atmosphere inside. I walked to our backyard, the place where I often found solace, where Theodore and I would sit under the stars dreaming of our future. The stars were out twinkling, indifferent above, and I felt small, insignificant under their vastness. I sat on the bench we had built together, the wood still warm from the day's sun. Here, in this solitude, I let the tears come. They were silent, but they carried the weight of 1,000 heartaches. As I sat there, the night seemed to wrap around me, offering a strange kind of comfort. I thought about our life, about how we had promised each other forever, how we had built this life on trust, now shattered like the glass of a broken mirror, reflecting back a distorted image of what once was my thoughts turned to the woman at the cafe. She was someone I had met, someone I had even liked. The betrayal stung not just because it was Theodore, but because it was someone I had welcomed into our lives. How could they do this? How could they look me in the eye at company gatherings, knowing what was happening behind my back? The more I thought, the angrier I became. Anger was better than the pain. It gave me a direction, a purpose I needed. Answers needed to confront this head-on. But how confrontation seemed too straightforward, too easy for the complexity of the emotions I was feeling. I decided then, under the starlight sky, that I would not confront Theodore immediately. Instead, I would gather more evidence, understand the depth of this betrayal. If I was to confront him, it would be with undeniable proof, with a clarity that would leave no room for excuses or all lies. I returned inside, my resolve hardening with each step. I went to Theodore's study, a room he had always considered his sanctuary. I knew his passwords, knew where he kept his personal files. Felt like an invasion, but what was privacy when trust was already broken? I started with his computer, emails, messages, anything that could give me insight into his life away from me. There were no explicit confessions, but there were hints, small breadcrumbs of deceit. Late-night emails with her plans for meetings that never seemed to involve work. Then in his desk drawer, I found a small black notebook. It wasn't his work journal, but something more personal. Inside I found notes, dates and times, cryptic at first, but soon revealing their true nature. They were rendezvous points, times when he was supposed to be at work or away on business. Each entry was like a dagger, but I kept reading, needing to know the extent of his duplicity. There were mentions of gifts, of places. They had been of moments. They had shared my heart, already heavy, sank further into despair. I closed the notebook, feeling the weight of my discovery. This wasn't just a fleeting affair. It was something deeper, something that had roots in our life together. I sat back in his chair, the room spinning slightly. The man I loved, the man I had built a life with, was living another life, one that didn't include me. The realization was crushing, but it also ignited a fire within me. I would not let this go. I would not be the passive victim in this narrative. If Rhyme was playing a game, then I would play too. But on my terms, I would find out everything, confront him with the truth, and decide our future from a place of knowledge, not ignorance. As I left to study, the house felt different. It was no longer just our home. It was a battleground, a place where I would fight for the truth, for my dignity, and perhaps for the remnants of our love. Little did I know this moment of solitude would lead me down a path I never imagined. I'd tread in the quiet of the night, with only the moon as my witness. I found myself in a vulnerable state, overwhelmed by the pressures of work and life. Jack, sensing my unease, came to my side, his warm presence comforting in an inexplicable moment of confusion and emotional turmoil. I crossed a line that I never thought possible. The details are blurred by my own disbelief and shame, but the act was done the next morning. The weight of my actions bore down on me like a physical force, leaving me in a state of shock and self-loathing. How could I face Theodore knowing what I had done? The morning light was harsh, unforgiving as it streamed through the curtains. I lay there staring at the ceiling, feeling the cold reality of my actions seep into my bones. Jack, ever loyal, nuzzled against me, his eyes filled with a concern I didn't deserve. I pushed myself up my body, heavy with guilt, and made my way to the bathroom. The mirror reflected a woman I barely recognized. Eyes hollow, face pale, a stark contrast to the vibrant Emma who had always faced life head-on. I splashed cold water on my face, trying to wash away the night's indiscretions, but the water only seemed to amplify the emptiness inside. My phone buzzed on the counter, a message from Theodore asking if I could pick up some groceries on my way home from work. The normalcy of the request felt like a cruel jest, a reminder of the life I was about to shatter at the hospital. My focus was fractured. Patience needed me, and yet my mind was elsewhere, replaying the night's events. The guilt was a constant companion, whispering accusations in my ear as I moved through my rounds. Each smile I forced felt like a betrayal to my own integrity. To the vows I had made to Theodore, lunchtime found me in the hospital cafeteria, sitting alone with a tray of untouched food. My colleagues chatted around me, their lives seemingly uncomplicated, untouched by the turmoil that was consuming me. I felt isolated, as if I were on an island of my own making, surrounded by a sea of normalcy. I needed to talk to someone, but my best friend Lisa was out of town, and I couldn't bear the thought of her disappointment. My parents would be devastated. No, this was a burden I had to carry alone, at least for now. The day dragged on, each minute stretching into an eternity. By the time I left the hospital, the sun was setting, casting long shadows that seemed to mock my own. I drove to the grocery store, the mundane task, feeling like a pilgrimage to my own downfall. As I walked through the aisles, picking up items mechanically, my mind was not on the food but on the confrontation that awaited me at home. I arrived to find Theodore in the kitchen, his back to me as he prepared dinner. The sight of him, so familiar yet now so foreign, made my heart ache. He turned, his smile genuine, unaware of the storm brewing within me. "Hey, how is your day?" he asked, his voice warm. I managed a nod, my throat tight. "Fine." "Yours busy but good, got a lot done on the new project," he said, his eyes lighting up with a passion he had for his work. I set the groceries down, my hands trembling slightly. The normalcy of this scene was almost unbearable. "Emma, are you? Okay, you look off." Theodore observed, his brow furrowing in concern. I swallowed hard, the words I needed to say stuck like a stone in my throat. I need to talk to you. Theodore, it's important." His expression shifted, a flicker of worry passing over his face. "What's wrong?" Kitchen, once a place of laughter and shared meals, now felt like a confessional. I took a deep breath, the air heavy with a scent of betrayal. "Last night I did something I regret deeply. I was confused, overwhelmed, and I made a mistake." Theodore's face paled, his eyes searching mine for more. What kind of mistake? I couldn't look at him, my gaze fixed on the floor tiles. "I was with someone else." "Theodore." It was a moment of weakness, of confusion, and "I'm so sorry." Silence enveloped us, thick and suffocating. Theodore stepped back, his hand gripping the countertop as if for support. Pain in his eyes was palpable. A mirror to my own. "Why? Emma? Why would you do this?" His voice was a whisper, laced with hurt and confusion. Tears streamed down my face, each one a testament to the gravity of my actions. "I don't know, Theodore. I was lost, feeling alone. Even when you were here, it was a mistake, a terrible mistake." He turned away, his shoulders slumped, the weight of my confession crushing him. "I need some time," he said, his voice barely audible. "I need to think." I nodded, understanding the need for space for him to process this betrayal. As he walked out of the kitchen, I felt the distance between us grow, not just physically but emotionally. Chasm I feared might never be bridged. Jack, sensing the tension, whimpered at my feet, his tail no longer wagging. I knelt down, burying my face in his fur, seeking some semblance of comfort in his unconditional love. The house was eerily quiet. Now the silence, a stark reminder of the life I had just appended. I sat on the floor, the groceries forgotten, my world crumbling around me. How could I have let this happen? How could I face Theodore? Knowing what I had done? Question haunted me of relentless echo in the empty rooms of our once happy home. Days turned into weeks, and the secret I harbored began to eat away at me. My interactions with Theodore became strained, my smiles were forced, and my laughter hollow. Jack, once a source of joy, now only reminded me of my betrayal. I tried to bury myself in work, but the guilt was a constant companion. One evening, as I was finishing up at the hospital, my phone buzzed with a message from Theodore. "Can we talk when you get home?" Read, my heart sank. I knew this conversation was inevitable, but the dread of facing him, of seeing the pain in his eyes, was overwhelming. When I arrived home, the house was unusually quiet. Theodore was sitting in the living room, his face drawn, his eyes heavy with unspoken questions. Jack, sensing the tension, lay quietly at his feet, his tail not wagging as it usually would. "Emma, we need to talk." Theodore began, his voice low, almost a whisper. "I've been thinking a lot about what you told me about what happened." I sat down opposite him, my hands clasped tightly in my lap. "I know, Theodore, I'm so sorry." He held up a hand, stopping me. "Let me finish. Please. I've been trying to understand, to process everything, and I need to know, Emma. Why did you do it?" The room felt like it was closing in on me. I was lost. "Theodore, I felt alone even when you were here, the pressure, the confusion. I made a terrible mistake. I was looking for something, some kind of connection, and I got lost in the moment." Theodore's gaze was intense, searching for sincerity in my words. "And what about us? What about our life together? Did it mean nothing to you?" "Meant everything," I said, my voice breaking. "That's why this is so hard. I love you, Theodore. I love our life, our home, but I felt like I was losing you. And in my desperation, I made a choice that I regret every second." He looked away, his jaw tight. "I've been thinking about us, about what we've built, and I can't help but wonder if this was just a symptom of something deeper, something wrong in our marriage." The air was thick, with the weight of our shared history now tainted by betrayal. "Maybe it was," I admitted, "but I want to fix it. Theodore, I want to work through this. I know I've hurt you, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make amends." Theodore stood up, pacing the room. "I want to believe you, Emma, but trust, once broken, is hard to mend. And what about your trust in me? Did you ever think that? Maybe I was struggling to that. Maybe I needed you just as much as you needed me." I hadn't considered it from his perspective, so caught up in my own turmoil. I didn't think about that. I was so focused on my own pain, my own fears. He stopped pacing, looking at me with a mix of sadness and resolve. "I need time, Emma, time to think, to feel, to decide if we can move past this. I'm not saying it's over, but I need space to understand if I can forgive, if we can rebuild." The silence that followed was deafening. I nodded, understanding his need for space. "Take all the time you need, Theodore. I'll be here waiting, hoping we can find our way back to each other." He walked towards the door, pausing with his hand on the knob. "I'll stay at my brother's for a while. Jack can stay with you. He seems to know you need him more right now." As the door closed behind him, the finality of the click echoed through the house. I sat there, the emptiness around me mirroring the void in my heart. Jack came over, resting his head on my lap, his eyes full of concern. The days that followed were a blur of work and solitude. I threw myself into my job, seeking solace in the lives I could save, the pain I could alleviate, even as my own life felt irreparably broken. One night, after a particularly long shift, I returned home to find a letter on the kitchen table. It was from Theodore. My hand shook as I opened it, the paper feeling like a lifeline or a noose. "Emma, I've spent these days reflecting on us, on what we've had and what we've lost. I want to believe we can rebuild, but I need to know you're committed to this as much as I am. I've scheduled a session with a marriage counselor for next week. If you're willing, let's try to find our way back to each other. Theodore, the letter was a beacon of hope, yet the path to reconciliation was fraught with uncertainty. I knew the road ahead would be difficult, filled with conversations that would cut deep. But it was a road I was willing to travel if it meant reclaiming the love we once had. As I sat there contemplating the letter, the house felt less like a battleground and more like a place where healing might begin. But the question lingered, heavy in the air. Could we truly mend what had been broken? Would this be the moment I'd have to reveal my darkest secret? I sat there, the weight of Theodore's letter in my hands, feeling the gravity of our situation. The house, once a sanctuary of love and laughter, now echoed with the silence of our fractured trust. Jack, sensing my distress, nuzzled closer, his warmth a small comfort in the cold reality of our life. Confrontation was inevitable. Sitting in our living room with Jack lying innocently between us, Theodore's patience wore in. He demanded to know what was wrong, his voice a mix of worry and frustration. With tears streaming down my face, I confessed the words felt like knives as they left my lips. Detailing the night in the backyard, Theodore's face went from confusion to horror. Then to a silent, devastating pain. He stood up, his body rigid, and walked out, leaving me with the echo of his footsteps and the heavy silence of our broken home. The days following were a blur. Theodore stayed away, his absence a palpable reminder of the chasm between us. I tried to fill the void with work, but every patient smile, every successful treatment was overshadowed by the turmoil in my own life. The hospital, usually a place of healing, now felt like a stage where I played a role. My personal life, a script I couldn't rewrite. One evening, as I was leaving the hospital, my phone buzzed. It was Theodore. "Can we talk?" His message was simple, yet it carried the weight of our future. My heart raced as I drove home each mile, feeling like a step towards an uncertain destiny. When I arrived, Theodore was already there, his face unreadable. He sat on the edge of our couch, his hands clasped tightly together. "I've been thinking," he started, his voice steady but low, "about us, about what you told me." I sat down, the space between us, feeling like a vast ocean. "Theodore." He held up a hand, stopping me. "Let me finish, Emma. I've been trying to understand, to process everything, and I need to know. Why did you do it?" The room seemed to shrink, the walls closing in. I was lost. "Theodore. I felt alone even when you were here, the pressure, the confusion. I made a terrible mistake. I was looking for something, some kind of connection, and I got lost." In the moment, Theodore's gaze was intense, searching for sincerity in my words. "And what about us? What about our life together? Did it mean nothing to you?" "It meant everything," I said, my voice breaking. "That's why this is so hard. I love you, Theodore. I love our life, our home. But I felt like I was losing you. And in my desperation, I made a choice that I regret every second." He looked away, his jaw tight. "I've been thinking about us, about what we've built, and I can't help but wonder if this was just a symptom of something deeper, something wrong in our marriage." The air was thick, with the weight of our shared history now tainted by betrayal. "Maybe it was," I admitted, "but I want to fix it. Theodore. I want to work through this. I know I've hurt you, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make amends." Theodore stood up, pacing the room. "I want to believe you, Emma, but trust, once broken, is hard to mend. And what about your trust to me? Did you ever think that maybe I was struggling to that? Maybe I needed you just as much as you needed me." I hadn't considered it from his perspective, so caught up in my own turmoil, I didn't think about that. I was so focused on my own pain, my own fears. He stopped pacing, looking at me with a mix of sadness and resolve. "I need time, Emma, time to think, to feel, to decide if we can move past this. I'm not saying it's over, but I need space to understand if I can forgive." We can rebuild. The silence that followed was deafening. I nodded, understanding his need for space. Take all the time you need, Theodore. I'll be here waiting, hoping we can find our way back to each other. He walked towards the door, pausing with his hand on the knob. I'll stay at my brother's for a while. Jack can stay with you. He seems to know you need him more right now. As the door closed behind him, the finality of the click echoed through the house. I sat there, the emptiness around me, mirroring the void in my heart. Jack came over, resting his head on my lap, his eyes full of concern. The days that followed were a blur of work and solitude. I threw myself into my job, seeking solace in the lives I could save, the pain I could alleviate, even as my own life felt irreparably broken. One night after a particularly long shift, I returned home to find a letter on the kitchen table. It was from Theodore. My hand shook as I opened it, the paper feeling like a lifeline or a noose. Emma, I've spent these days reflecting on us, on what we've had and what we've lost. I want to believe we can rebuild, but I need to know you're committed to this as much as I am. I've scheduled a session with a marriage counselor for next week. If you're willing, let's try to find our way back to each other. Theodore, the letter was a beacon of hope, yet the path to reconciliation was fraught with uncertainty. I knew the road ahead would be difficult, filled with conversations that would cut deep, but it was a road I was willing to travel if it meant reclaiming the love we once had. As I sat there contemplating the letter, the house felt less like a battleground and more like a place where healing might begin. But the question lingered, heavy in the air: could we truly mend what had been broken? Would this be the moment I'd have to reveal my darkest secret? The next few days were filled with a nervous anticipation. Each morning I woke up with a mix of dread and hope, the letter from Theodore, a constant reminder of the crossroads we were at. I prepared for the counseling session, rehearsing in my mind what I would say, how I would express my regret, my desire to rebuild our life together. The day of the session arrived, and I found myself standing outside the counselor's office, my heart pounding. Theodore was already there, his expression unreadable. We exchanged a nod, a silent acknowledgement of the gravity of the moment. Inside, the counselor, a woman with kind eyes and a soothing voice, welcomed us. I understand you're here to work through some challenges in your marriage. Let's start by each of you sharing what brought you here today. Theodore spoke first, his voice steady but pained. I found out Emma was unfaithful. It's been difficult to process. Counselor turned to me, her gaze encouraging Emma. I took a deep breath, the weight of my confession heavy on my tongue. I made a mistake, a terrible one. I was feeling lost, disconnected, and I acted out of that confusion. I regretted deeply, and I want to repair what I've broken. The session unfolded with raw honesty, each of us peeling back layers of hurt, misunderstanding, and betrayal. Counselor guided us through exercises meant to rebuild trust, to communicate our needs and fears. It was painful, like reopening wounds, but necessary. As we left the session, there was a tentative peace between us, a fragile bridge over the chasm of our past actions. Theodore looked at me, his eyes softer than they had been in weeks. I'm not saying it's fixed, but I'm willing to try if you are. I am Theodore more than anything. I replied, feeling the first flicker of hope since that night in the backyard. We walked back to our cars, the silence between us now less about avoidance and more about contemplation. At home, I found myself looking at our life with new eyes, seeing not just the pain but the potential for renewal. Jack greeted us with his usual enthusiasm, his tail wagging, oblivious to the human complexities around him. His simple joy was a reminder of what we could strive for: unconditional love and forgiveness. That night, as I lay in bed, the house felt different, not empty but expectant. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in weeks it didn't feel bleak. The journey ahead would be long, fraught with challenges, but the possibility of reclaiming our love, our life was there. Question remained: would we make it? Could we truly heal from such deep wounds? Only time would tell. But for now I held on to the hope that our love, once so strong, could be rebuilt stronger and more resilient. What would become of us now that the truth was out? The aftermath of my confession was like living in a fog each day, blurred into the next, marked only by the ticking of the clock and the soft, comforting presence of Jack by my side. Theodore had moved out, leaving a void in her home that seemed to echo with every step I took. The silence was deafening, a stark contrast to the life we had once shared. Filled with laughter and whispered promises, therapy sessions became our new routine. We attended both individual and couples counseling, trying to piece together what remained of our marriage. Theodore, despite the initial shock and revulsion, chose to stay driven by a love that was stronger than his disgust. It was in these sessions that we began to unpack the layers of our betrayal, the shame and the confusion in the quiet, sterile office of our therapist, Dr. Isabella. We sat on opposite ends of a plush couch, the distance between us as palpable as the tension in the air. Dr. Isabella began, her voice gentle yet firm. Let's start with you. How have you been processing your actions and the impact they've had on your relationship? I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of Theodore's gaze, even though he was looking away. It's been overwhelming. Every day I'm reminded of the pain I've caused not just to Theodore, but to myself. I feel like I've shattered something precious, and I'm not sure how to put it back together. Theodore shifted slightly, his eyes now meeting mine, and I've been trying to understand why. Why did you feel so lost? Emma, why didn't you come to me? Question hung in the air, heavy with the need for an answer that could bridge the gap between us. I was scared, Theodore, scared that you were already gone in your heart, if not in body. I felt alone even when you were here. I made a mistake, a terrible one, but it came from a place of fear and confusion. Dr. Isabella nodded, her pen scribbling notes. It's important to recognize these feelings. Emma and Theodore, how does hearing this make you feel? Theodore's jaw tightened, his voice low. It hurts. It hurts to think she felt alone when I was trying so hard to keep us together, even with my own struggles. But I also see now that maybe I wasn't as present as I thought. We worked through these sessions, each one peeling back another layer of our shared pain. Jack, our unwitting catalyst, became a symbol of our journey towards healing. His presence during our at-home discussions was a silent reminder of the life we had built, the love we still had buried beneath the rubble of our mistakes. Over time, our relationship transformed. It wasn't about recreating what we had before. That was impossible. Instead, it became about understanding, forgiveness, and a new kind of intimacy born from shared pain. We learned to communicate in ways we never had to, express our fears, our desires, and our needs without the fear of judgment or rejection. One evening, after a particularly intense session, Theodore and I sat in our backyard, the stars above us, a silent witness to our conversation. Theodore started, his voice softer than usual. I've been thinking a lot about us, about what we've been through. I want to believe we can rebuild, but I need to know you're committed to this as much as I am. I turned to him, the cool night air brushing against my cheeks. Theodore, I am more than anything. I know I've hurt you deeply, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make amends, to rebuild. Trust. He looked at me, his eyes searching for sincerity. I want to trust you again, Emma. But trust, once broken, is hard to mend, and I need to know. Did you ever think that maybe I was struggling to that? Maybe I needed you just as much as you needed me. His words struck a chord. I hadn't considered it from his perspective, so caught up in my own turmoil. I didn't think about that. I was so focused on my own pain, my own fears. I'm sorry, Theodore. He reached out his hand, finding mine, a gesture that felt both foreign and familiar. We both made mistakes, Emma, but I'm here because I believe in us. I believe we can find our way back to each other. The sessions continued. Each one is step towards understanding, towards healing. We learned to forgive not just each other but ourselves. Process was slow, fraught with moments of doubt and backsides, but also with moments of genuine connection, of laughter that felt real, not forced. As months passed, the house began to feel like a home again, not the same as before, but something new, something built on the foundation of our past love, but with the resilience of our current efforts. Jack, ever the loyal companion, seemed to sense the shift, his tail wagging more freely, his barks echoing with a joy that had been absent for too long yet. Question lingered like a shadow at the edge of our newfound peace. Could we ever truly move past this? Or would the shadow of that night linger forever? The answer wasn't clear, but for the first time in a long while there was hope that our love, once so strong, could be rebuilt stronger and more resilient. And as we sat there under the starlight sky, I felt a flicker of that hope, a promise of what could be if we continued to choose each other day by day. If you feel that this story is meaningful and brings useful lessons, please like and subscribe to the channel to support me. Thanks.